another episode of Pepper Content Presents Top of the Funnel, where content conversations begin. And today's conversation is with someone who has been in the B2B SaaS content marketing space for over 6 years now, and a majority of that time has been at Webengage, and she's the AVP of content marketing there presently. She was at Netcore before this, and I'm very excited to speak to her. Let's welcome Forum to the show. Hi, Forum. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Natasha. It's my privilege to be here.
So we'll start from the very beginning. I'd love for you to talk me through your journey so far. What all have you dabbled in, and what is your current role at Webengage? So, what is a typical day for you at Webengage?
Okay, all right. So, I've always been a lover of all things content. I think right from school, although I did not have the privilege of studying initially in a full-fledged English medium school. I would travel a few kilometers to a different state altogether to study and stuff. But I think that motivated me to have more conversations with people. And something about conversations has always stood with me because you get to know so much and learn so much. And through that, I started journaling my experiences and stuff. And that's how, my first job came into the picture. I started off with Netcore as a copywriter, where I, then moved on to being a content writer and so on and so forth, where I did almost everything that a content person would do and wouldn't do as well. Uh, uh, I think over a couple of years at Netcore, and then post that I took a break from the corporate cycle and I got back to meeting more people as a freelancer, hosting stuff for companies like Ford Motors and Cipla and Crossword bookstores. I was also interviewing people and doing a lot of freelance stuff, basically in the content field itself. That's how also again I got back into the B2B SaaS arena, where I joined Webengage as a content marketer. 1 year into the role, I got promoted to lead the content marketing arm, where I also built the team from scratch, and now I lead and of course absolutely oversee the content marketing team at Webengage.
If I were to ask you, what are the two or three sort of big asks that you have of content? I mean, I heard you say case study is this big sort of
Yeah.
pillar for you, and that's very interesting. I've spoken to a few people so far, but I haven't heard anyone specifically talking about case studies in terms of having a full team handling that, putting so much emphasis on that. Of course, it's
Yeah.
part of their funnel, and
Correct.
they do generate case studies, but so if I were to ask you, what are those two or three things that are key to your content strategy at Webengage?
So if you're asking in terms of resources, it's of course, like I said, case studies are like a major part of our content resource funnel. Apart from that, we write a lot of, we kind of try to develop a lot of ebooks, and again, ebooks as well would not be the usual ebooks that you see in the B2B SaaS world, right? We go very specific into developing our ebooks. So if you look at the resources section on the Webengage website, right, you will see that we have these ebooks published in form of master packs, right? Now, what are these master packs? These master packs are a collection of about 4 to 5 different resources, inclusive of, let's say, a guide to certain kind of engagement, or your how to guide to retain so and so users and double your revenue. And these are all master packs curated for specific industries, namely, edtech, sorry, we yet to publish it for fintech, but we have edtech, OTA, gaming, so on and so forth, right? So we go quite deeper into producing content that's valuable to specific industry, and rather than getting into the generic world. So that's that. And the third most is newsletters. Now, of course, these are not direct content resources, but of course, you are developing copies, right, as a part of your distribution efforts. So we lay a lot of focus on our email marketing and especially the newsletters, right? So I send out these newsletters twice a month, and these are highly curated newsletters, right? We try to story tell, and these are the most sought after resources, in the in sort of our audience, among our audience. We have people writing back to us, telling that they really love our newsletters, and if you see, they're unlike these usual SaaS newsletters that you will see in the market.
So can I say that your approach is more in terms of long form content versus short form, or would you say that short form is reserved more for the newsletter, and then you prefer going deeper into the content in terms of your ebooks, playbooks, etc.?
I think I would absolutely go with you. While we do quite a few things in terms of short form as well, but short form would always be, the repurposed version of our long form content. We focus a lot more on long form. That's right, because we intend to give out almost everything. So let's say if I'm writing a piece on, how to develop an effective strategy to retain your edtech users, and make sure it covers everything, right from step A to step Z, right? So there's nothing that'll be left to part out in terms of knowledge and how to's and even examples, right? So yes, I would absolutely agree. I think we are a lot more focused on long form. In fact, if you see, our newsletters are also quite longer. They might, start off with a story and some anecdotes. Sometimes I also add my own personal anecdotes to it. And then you'll have a set of resources, and then you'll have some feel good content as well. So as to say, long form is something that we love doing at Webengage, and we focus a lot more on.
So I might be digressing from what we discussed earlier, but
Yeah.
perhaps you can answer this a little later and think about
Yeah.
it. What are some tips that you can give in terms of creating long form content? So, what are a
Right.
few things? Because it's a heavily researched form of content. Not
Yeah.
everyone can get it right. And the downside or the upside is that today there's so much content on the internet that it sometimes it just feels like you're reading something you've already read, right, somewhere else.
Right. That's
So
true.
how do you kind of, what are a few things that brands and companies can do to create actually long form content that makes a difference? Has
Yeah. So, talking about long form, like absolutely correctly said, it does take a lot of research, a lot more than expected, when you sit down to do a short form content versus, a long form content like a case study or an ebook. Why do I say case study as a long form content? Is again because our case studies are almost a dozen pages usually. There's a lot more that we give out, right from everything about the brand to how did the brand go about doing us, implementing a certain use case, and how can you as an audience or as a practitioner do it too. So there's a lot of hand holding that goes into our long form content, and that is something that makes our content at Webengage very unique, right? And like you said, there's no dearth of content right now, in especially the SaaS world, right? People have, in the last couple of years or so, people have rightfully realized the importance of content. I think content is the way forward, and people have accepted it. We see almost every brand producing dozens of blogs every week and month, and so on and so forth. But what really makes the audience stick to your content, and especially talking from my experience and what we do at Webengage, I have a simple mantra, right? uh, Keep things simple, but keep things data backed and research backed, right? A good way to also ensure this is, being original, right? If you're sticking to your own data, right? Let's say I am preparing an ebook. The ebook is about, for example, how can you develop an effective in-app marketing strategy, right? I might not go on the internet and look for 10 different articles that my competitors have posted, or that are available on the internet. Maybe I'll do that as 5% of my research strategy, but 90% of my strategy will rely on the data that the Webengage dashboard provides, right? We have tons of clients using in-app. So why not go back into my clients and study what they're doing, talk to them, and then get the information out and then put it in a very understandable format through storytelling, right? Another aspect to making long form content amazing and interesting is storytelling, like we always say, right? When you write content, storytelling has to be a part of it. um, uh, whether it's SaaS or D2C, doesn't matter. I believe even SaaS can be a lot more interesting, creative. You don't have to be so boring, right? Just talk about the product and some steps and so on and so forth. You can play around with your design. You can play around with the way you write the content, right? Try to have in-person examples, real life examples, because after all, somebody who's consuming your content is a human, right? Even there's somebody who might be receiving an in-app message from another brand, right? Somebody working for, let's say, Zomato might always be receiving a notification from another e-commerce brand, right? As a user, so it's easy to digest for a person who's reading your long form content and makes it relatable as well for them. And the final tip I would say is to have a lot more action items after every, let's say, few paragraphs, right? You might want to give out something that sort of encourages the person, right? Keep them reading onto the next stuff, arouses the curiosity, as well as something that makes them feel like, oh yeah, I can definitely do this, so let me read more and see what more can I do it, or how can I do the next thing. So that keeps the ball rolling and makes them want to read the entire piece that you've put in so much efforts in doing.
So we have talked a lot about creation, and I'd love to switch sides and kind of pick your brains about the the impact side of content, right? The
Yeah, yeah.
metrics, the ROI, the stuff that most left brain content creators don't want to think about, but are forced to think about now with as content marketing is changing. So I'd love to understand that at Webengage and in your experience, how does that piece work? How do you track your campaigns? How do you track your case studies in specific? How do you track the success of your long form content? So if you can talk a bit about that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think, yeah, if you are into content marketing, you cannot run away from the fact that you do need to measure what's happening to your content, right? I mean, as much as you would want to make it less boring and enjoyable for people, ultimately your goal is to bring in business to your company, right? So it's absolutely vital to do that. When it comes to case studies specifically, our case studies are gated, right? So it's very easy to track those because they're gated. We do get the information of somebody downloading the case studies, and we do keep a very close look at anything that is, that has to do with downloadable content on our website. Now, our webinars are also tracked in terms of, people viewing the webinar script and the recording and stuff. So again, that's gated, right? So most of our valuable content, we've stuck to keeping it gated so that it becomes easier, and the qualification process also becomes easier, right? uh, as to who's downloading it, and should the person move forward into the funnel, or should we engage with them more and educate them more and make them realize whether the product is right for them. Or sometimes it might also be the case that somebody just loved your content but might not be the right audience to use your tool, right? You might not want to put in more efforts to try to pull them down into bottom of your funnel. You'll stick to just helping them keeping educated and having fun with your content. That's about it. So um, of course, we utilize our own Webengage dashboard coupled with Google Analytics and other martech tools to analyze our downloads and our performance of the content. And then in terms of newsletters and stuff, because there are distribution channels, we also keep a very close look on what's happening to our social media posts, what's happening to our newsletters. One unique thing that has been working for us is also, most of my email newsletters have an option to respond to me, and I personally do engage with people on newsletters. The good part is that we do get responses on the newsletters. So that's how we've very slowly and gradually, I wouldn't say it's been great so far, but let's say even if 10 people are responding, all of these are humans, right? It's not like robots responding to me. People sharing their experiences, they become a very special part of a community, right?
You mentioned distribution as well, and I would love for you to talk a bit about that
Yeah.
also. What is the how important is defining that distribution strategy as
Yeah.
part of your content marketing strategy, and B, what is the distribution strategy for Webengage? Is it about creating your own channels, working hard to do that? Is it outreach? Is there a sort of clearly defined strategy there?
So to answer your first part of the question, definitely I think distribution, like I said earlier, is very much important, right? If you want to get your stuff out to the right audience, it's important to have various distribution initiatives and the strategy in place, right? Right from your organic distribution to other forms of distribution, including paid and referral, right? How we go about it is we have our calendar in place, usually our content editorial. The distribution team is always apprised, when is a certain resource going to go out, a new resource, of course. And, there are different steps that we take care of, right from promoting a certain resource on social media, on platforms like Medium, Quora, QZest, and other, referral distribution platforms. And they are some of the resources are handpicked and also distributed via display and search ads. And then finally, there's our, of course, most loved newsletter. So the newsletter is also utilized to distribute a lot of our resources, right, based on our audience. And then we have a lot of other different email campaigns that are run on a day-to-day basis, where a very curated set of resources are distributed to a very curated set of audience again, like I said, we have a lot of industry specific content. So I would want to make sure that an e-commerce bunch of resource goes to only e-commerce segment of users, right? An edtech resource would only be distributed to edtech practitioners. So that is something that we go deep into while we prepare our distribution strategy. And then finally, the usual repurposing bit that happens where we share a lot of our stuff into snackable, where we sort of convert a lot of our long form content into snackable content, and then that's promoted in a form of carousel on LinkedIn post. Or we also put up, let's say there's a case study that's converted into a slide deck format and uploaded on SlideShare as well. We also utilize YouTube and Instagram and other social media platforms to use our long form content in the form of snackable content.
Let's talk a bit about your specific, some specific campaigns that you are excited about, that you felt, you would call a success.
Think it's very clear from our conversation so far that case studies are my most favorite type of resources, right? And uh, uh, fortunately enough, it's also been one of our most successful resources. So at Webengage, the top three resources when it comes to tracking downloads, right, have been case studies, webinars, and ebooks, right? In terms of case studies, I'd say, what made it successful and how has it been successful is because, like I said, our case studies are long form. It's not like a two-pager story with, about the brand and then just sprinkling a bit of results here and there. It's very detailed. It's a typical case study that you'd see, in I would say an industry like a medical industry, right? How they pick up a case, a patient, and go into defining everything about a patient. What was the issue? How the solution was formulated for resolving it, and then how what was the impact like, right? So that is how our case studies are like. If you go through any of our case studies, you'd know that if I have a case study for an edtech brand uh, X, there would be a similar tech brand called Y. The person at the brand Y can definitely make use of something that has been written in the case study that's formulated for the brand X, right? So it's so much helpful for people. Now, how? am I so confident about it is because of the responses that we've received and the impact that we've seen, right? On a daily basis, we see that we have almost about a dozen downloads of case studies, and the number only keeps increasing, right? We also pay a lot more focus on optimizing our case study page. And over and above, we sort of do keep a track of what's happening on a weekly basis as well, right? So from the learnings that we see, we keep course correcting ourselves, and we've reached to a point where we know that what really works for a particular format, whether it's a case study or an ebook or something else, right? So through the course of time, we've taken our lessons and unlearned things, and curated stuff accordingly. um, so that's one part of it. That's about case studies. When it comes to ebooks as well, I think that's the similar fact that again they're gated, so it's quite easy to sort of measure the impact. Again, recently we published a guide to flash sale campaigns. Now the idea was that you will see that every time there's Black Friday approaching, you'll see all the B2B SaaS brands, writing about how to run a Black Friday sale. And it's in a blog format. Instead, what we've done is we developed an ebook, which is like your guide to flash sale campaigns, which you can utilize throughout the year. Whether you're sitting in India celebrating Rakhi and you want to run campaigns for Rakhi, you have a solution in the ebook for that. Whether you're in the US celebrating Halloween, you can have a solution to that from our ebook. So the hack here is to have evergreen content that can be consumed by the entire world as well, while there are certain resources that are curated for specific industries. So that's how the impact also leads up to a positive, it's quite positive in terms of that. And uh, very surprising thing is also that people literally write back to us about how a certain content resource helped them do a certain thing. People personally write to our founders on LinkedIn, or people write to me, or anybody in the organization. These resources also come in very handy for our sales team. So there are certain areas where you might not be able to measure the direct impact in absolute numbers, but you know that the impact is happening. It's like a circle. It's like a loop where you see that ultimately when a lead converts and you look back at their journey, you know that these are the certain types of resources that they really went through, they downloaded, or maybe the sales folks had shared with them. So that's how the impact overall leads up to the entire picture.
Interesting. What does the future of content marketing look like? And of course, specifically in the B2B space.
I think it's already a vast ocean, and I think it's only gonna go bigger and better from here, because I think also because of the pandemic, a lot of companies have uh, hinged on content marketing, and started realizing the value of content marketing, right? If you look at the overall B2B SaaS arena, right? And if you look at a couple of years ago, not all the companies were relying on inbound marketing. There were only few, I'd say, Webengage being one of them. uh, but now, if you see, a lot more companies are relying on inbound marketing, and I think content is not going anywhere. It's here forever. I'd say, or no matter there's AI or there's GPT, anything coming in, I think it's always going to be about emotions and humans telling the stories. So it's going to be there forever, is what I'd say. And it's only going to help businesses do bigger and better things in terms of marketing, or direct contribution to the business's growth.
And we'll end with a personal question, which
Mhm.
is two things that you uh, love about being a content marketer, and two things that you feel are the biggest challenges.
Yeah. So I think two things. I think there are more than two things that I love about being a content marketer. Let's say being in the content field in the B2B SaaS space is that uh, every day is going to be exciting, right? Because we have the leverage to do new and new things every day. Since uh, also because my personal agenda is always to stay original and stay simple in whatever we do in terms of content, right? And when you want to be original, it does demand a lot of brain work and creativity, right? And that eventually allows a lot of flow of all sort of happy hormones, so that's very exciting to do, right? And the second thing is that you get to create an impact to a lot more lives, whether it's business or somebody reading your stuff or consuming something, right? Like I said, I believe a lot in human to human absorption, right? Because it's a human writing for human after all. So something that I feel really happy and excited about waking up every day is that, I know that I'm going to write something. And when I say I, it's of course me and my team, right? We're going to develop something that will or that should make an impact to at least a certain segment of people, right? If not for the entire world, we can at least try to make an impact to at least a smaller segment, which could utilize our stuff like forever, right? And keep coming back to our platform. If that's done, I think my job is done.
The challenges.
Right. Challenges again. So I think one of the challenges I would say right now, I'm not sure if my fellow marketers are also facing the same, especially people who are um, leading the content marketing teams, right? I'm not sure if in the B2B SaaS world we've really introduced the possibility of having in-house editors, right? Usually, in most cases, I think somebody who's leading the content team becomes the more bottleneck in most cases, because you want to ensure the tonality, you want to ensure the style and everything that reflects your brand, right? So sometimes the leads do become the bottleneck. So when you ask me about a challenge as a content lead, that's one. But if you're asking me about the challenge in the B2B SaaS space, I wouldn't say it's a challenge per se, but I'd say it's an exciting challenge rather. Is that right now we do not have enough resources, and when I say enough resources, meaningful resources that really help various emerging geographies who will be uh, adopting B2B SaaS tools, right? There are so many markets right now, like LATAM and Middle East and other markets, right? They're evolving. They're not like the US and the Indian markets who've already, been into using the MarTech tools for years now. So there is a gap that needs to be filled in. So there's very little data, there's very little learning that has been provided to our generation of marketers, right? Where we need to develop resources for these markets. So that's a challenge, but I'd say that's a very exciting challenge because we'll be the ones producing the content for these markets, right? And we'll be the first wave of people uh, developing interesting content for these markets and setting the benchmarks and bars for these particular markets in the B2B SaaS world.
Nice. That wasn't a challenge. Doesn't count. Okay. And I
Yeah.
truly resonated on the editor part of it. I think editors
Yeah,
are
you
so
do.
underrated. They're the most underrated resource there are. Everyone talks about content writers, but people forget these poor editors who actually take the writing to the next level. And
Exactly.
I completely agree. I think the person leading content becomes the bottleneck. This changes. I hope that this becomes a very important job profile in most companies with a content plan. And on that note, uh, let's call it a day. And thanks so much, Forum. Thanks for making the time to do this. And it's been a great conversation. I had fun.
I had fun too. Like,
Cool.
I'm
So
excited, looking forward to it.
I'm glad you did this.